I want to get your perspective on something, not as a father, not as a consumer, not as a content creator, but as a CEO. Because for as long as I've been doing stuff with Valuetainment for the past few years, we've actually applauded Reed Hastings for being such a brilliant CEO, right? Yeah. He wrote a book called what? No Rules Rules. Yeah. Right? And we've actually been singing his credit for years, okay? So I want you to put your CEO hat on right now for a second and ask yourself, okay, they clearly are having some sort of board meeting right now, being like, all right, guys, during COVID, 2020, 21, they were on top of the world. The subscribership was up bananas. Everyone was on lockdown. Up until, what, 6 months ago, Squid Game, which I never saw, was the biggest fucking show in the history of Netflix, of everything. Dude, you're the man. You're the best. You're the best CEO ever. And now, boom, just like that, their stock has dropped, crumbled. Netflix has basically been kind of canceled by the market. So you as a CEO, what is Reed Hastings saying right now? He's got to be having like a war room conversation with his team, saying, guys, huddle up. He probably has crisis mode. He
probably has a picture of that pregnant Asian guy, and he's like, I don't ever want to see this shit again.
So let me tell you what I just did. Here's what I just did. I just went on Crunchbase, and I looked at who sits on their board. It's the first thing I did.
Okay.
You got Rich Barton, who sits on their board. You got Timothy Haley, who sits on their board since '98. You got Jay Hogue, who sits on their board since '99. You got Ann, who's been sitting there since 2010. You got Ann Sweeney, who's been there since 2015. Brad Smith, who's been there since 2015. And then you got Matthias Dopfner, who's been there since 2018. And then you got Reed, who's been there since '97. Okay. Do you remember when the whole thing happened with Twitter and everybody was bashing, Jack Dorsey's this, Jack Dorsey's that, Jack Dorsey's this? It's Jack. I can't believe Jack Dorsey, kicked suspended or silenced Trump. And Jack was kind of like playing the, neutral side. And I was like, oh, it's all Jack Dorsey's fault. And then Jack Dorsey resigns, and boom, he kind of works his way out. I think May's going to be his last month to be the executive chairman, and a new guy comes in and takes over. I'm like, oh shit, Jack was actually not as bad as the new guy is, right? The new guy changing him, all this other stuff, and now Musk is talking about potentially buying Twitter, and in doing so, he's thinking about doing something with Dorsey. Why is Dorsey's name being mentioned again and something like that? So, anyways, so the point is, I don't know if it's Reed. As a company gets bigger, certain things you no longer are as involved in, especially their model. If you've ever read their book, No Rules Rules, they'll give you a budget and they'll say, go do whatever you want to buy, and you don't even need to get it approved by us. That's their model. Like, you can go buy a $6.5 million project and you don't even need to run it by Reed and a lot of their C-suites.
I love that we're going to start implementing that at Valuetainment. I really
You're so funny.
Go for it.
So the point is, I don't know how much of it is him right now, but I can tell you right now, you affected people's pockets. There are people who had $5 million in Netflix stock, and you just cost that person that had $5 million in Netflix stock, you cost them $2 million in a day. One day, $2 million. And that person, Tyler, mute yourself. That person who just lost $2 million in a day, that person is not sitting on the sideline saying, oh, it's okay, Reed. We trust you. No. They're getting emails. They're losing their minds. They're calling their broker. Then Morgan's calling these guys. And Goldman's probably already had a call with them. Anybody that's given them money, they got there's a lot of difficult calls they're going through. And typically in situations like this, you have to regroup. You have to bring new leadership team in. You got to fire some people. You got to let some people go. They've gone through this before.
You're saying fire people from the board? How does that work?
Not from the board.
You can't?
You need to bring some new people to the board. They got 8. They need to add 3 more because 11's an odd number. But there's some moves I'd be making if I was them. But if they don't move too quickly, shit's going to get very ugly. And by the way, Bank of America is not even saying to hold. So the market's not even putting them in the hold category. You know how there's a buy, hold, and sell category? They're in the sell category. They're not even in the hold category. So people are not even saying it's over, meaning brace for impact, it's going to go lower. I didn't say that. A lot of the analysts are saying that.
Let me go one step deeper with you. You know how we play that game with a lot of the people? Okay, who are the most important...
CEO, board member?
No, not so much that. Like universities... social media. How do you describe that? The most influential parts of society. What are the reasons? The top 5 reasons that Netflix is it because they pandered to woke culture? Is it because of content? Is it because of competition? Because of Paramount, Disney, and Amazon? Like, what are the 3 or 4 reasons that this is happening? It can't just be, well, their content isn't that good, or because they got a pregnant guy. There's got to be some business reasons.
What's one of the worst things that happens to athletes? I saw a Conor McGregor video I showed yesterday in front of the guys, and when he says, people say a loss is really going to be bad and blah, 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 blah. He says, let me tell you what's worse than a loss that can ruin your career, a win. When you win, you get softer. When you win, you show up a little later. When you win, you get a little cockier. When you win, you become casual. When you win, natural instinct to most people. These guys been winning for too long. It's like, how many consecutive quarters have you been kicking ass? Yeah. You gotten cocky. You're throwing your weight around. You're like, oh, we got a Grammy. We got the Oscars. And all. Here's who we are. And the market just said, listen, bro, chill out.
Yep.
Yes, you're a billionaire. Yes, you got a lot of money. Salute for producing a great product and putting a company that almost bought you out for $50 million blockbuster. You put an $8 billion out. But this is capitalism. Customers comes first. And you just screwed up. So it doesn't matter. They royally screwed up because they've been winning for too long. And maybe the best thing that happened is an L that they just took.
I saw it with Comedy Central at their, I mean, they're still a channel technically, but they're not famous for their content, their original content now. I don't know anything that's on their network that isn't a rebought. Like, they're just running Office reruns now, but it wasn't that way. Back in 2009, 2010, I was writing on a show called The Burn with Jeff Ross, the Roastmaster General. And I remember sitting at the table for one of our first important meetings that we had to clean up the writer's room for. There were some Comedy Central execs coming in, like whoop-de-whoop. And they came in, and I remember at one point, literally, one of them said the words, because someone had brought up Netflix. And in 2009, Netflix wasn't really, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was coming. And I think it was even me that mentioned, Netflix does this thing where they don't have commercials, blah, 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 whatever we were talking about. And I remember the Comedy Central exec, who is since fired, not a board member, and a regular executive, someone who's supposed to decide what gets a second season or who we should work with and all these things. And I remember him specifically saying, we are Comedy Central. We are the comedy go-to on cable, and people will always come back to us.
Can't be like that.
No way.
This is not how market works.
You're in the room when this happens.
He was gone. He was gone 2 or 3 years later. And not only is he gone, but and these guys, again, Hollywood, they all hire each other's friends. I know these guys are all executives at Apple now and here now and Netflix now, by the way, because they need people with resumes that look like they were doing something. But meanwhile, they were sinking the ship as it was going on. They buried this show, which was hilarious. Granted, I'm a little bit biased because I was one of the writers on it. But I mean, all these shows that should have been pushed, they hide behind reruns of something, for example. You don't get to decide if you get picked up, you don't get to decide where your new show goes. So executives are making bad decisions after bad decisions. They debut a new show, but they're putting it after reruns of this old show. And so by putting you in a position, they're already deciding that you're going to be canceled because they're going to go, your viewership's down. Meanwhile, you could put a shitty show right after a good show, and they get picked up because the people are already there. Your TV was on the channel, so it's harder to turn the channel than it is to put it on.
We talked about this during dinner with Joe about Disney. If you remember when a name came up, he's like, I know this person. I'm not going to mention what it was, but I know this person. I know this person. So, by the way, somebody just commented in the comment section, so they made me take a look at this. Ackman loses more than $430 million in one day because of Netflix.
What?
Okay, so this is when it gets scary because people like this start calling. When Carl Icahn lost money with AIG, do you know what Carl Icahn did within 2 months? Every day he bullied the CEO until they had to fire the CEO, and the CEO had to step down. Guys like this have so much power where these are the guys you don't want to piss off. Like, you know how in Russia they talk about Putin and say, who should Putin worry about? And what do they say? The family, the oligarchs, the oligarchs,
the rich.
If they say anything, you don't want. This is oligarch, is who it is. Ackman is part of the oligarch. If you look at it from that standpoint, but you said something, and it made me think about this. I've been processing the understanding of the meaning of fear in a different way. There's certain words in my life I want to have a better understanding of what this word means. I was always curious about the word lazy, like why are we lazy? And then more I did, I realized, okay, boredom stems from laziness. If somebody gives a boring joke, you're going to become lazy and your body gets tired. Great. I want to know what it means to be lazy. But fear is so confusing because we've been campaigned with the shirt that we all wore as kids that said what? No fear. No fear. Bullshit. I'm probably extremely afraid. And let me explain to you what I meant by this. So somebody's asking me the question and explaining fear. I'm like, let me tell you, when I go back and actually pause, like, you know how we all say the answer because it's the right thing to say? And like, is that really who I was?
Yeah.
Let me think. I'm a pretty scared guy. And what do you mean by that? I was so afraid of my dad dying and my kids never meeting him because I never met my grandma. I never met my grandpa. You have no idea how scared I was at that. I would have nightmares in the middle of the night. It's not fear of, oh my God, I feared this. But it was such a fear that created such a sense of urgency for me to get to work because now that fear is gone because all my kids know him so well and they love him. They love their grandpa.
Yeah.
That fear is gone. Now the next fear is I don't want to walk my daughter down the aisle and she marries a schmuck. In that moment, I'm giving her up. And I'm like, you're an idiot. And she chose to marry you because daddy made some bad choices. And I was lazy. And now I have to deal with a moron like you. I want her to choose to marry a moron because she chose to marry a moron, not choose to marry a moron because he makes 60 grand a year and he's going to support. I don't want that to be the reason from a place of fear, right? Netflix is not afraid right now, and they should be afraid.
Yeah, I think so.
The market is not afraid right now.
Right.
When you get cocky, you lose fear. You have to be reminded you need to get scared again.
If you enjoyed this short clip, click over here to watch another short clip. And if you want to watch the entire episode, the entire podcast, click here.